Every single day. Someone wants to lend you money. A credit card. A car loan. A mortgage. A personal loan. It almost feels like the world has an endless supply of money waiting just for you. But have you noticed how nobody is desperately trying to teach you how to live without debt? Strange. Imagine walking into a bank and saying, "I don't need a loan. I have no debt. I've built enough investments that my money works for me." Would the bank celebrate? Or would you become their least valuable customer? Because here's something most people never think about. Banks are businesses, and every business needs customers. But not all customers are equally profitable. Some customers walk into a bank, deposit their paycheck, pay every bill on time, avoid debt, and leave. Others pay interest, month after month after month. Which customer, do you think, earns the bank more money? The answer explains far more than most people realize. Because banks don't simply store money. They make money from money. And the moment you understand how that really works, you'll stop looking at debt the way you've always been taught. This isn't a story about evil banks. Banks perform an essential role. They help families buy homes, businesses grow, economies function. But they also answer to one thing: profit. And once you understand where that profit comes from, you'll start seeing advertisements, credit cards, monthly payments, even easy financing in a completely different way. Because the biggest product a bank has ever sold isn't money, it's time. And that changes everything. Let's imagine two people walk into the same bank. Both are 30 years old. Both earn $100,000 a year. Both are financially responsible. On paper, they look almost identical. The first person we'll call Sarah. Every month, Sarah gets paid. She spends less than she earns. She saves the difference. She avoids credit card debt. She pays every bill on time. Whenever she wants something, she waits. She saves. Then she buys it. The second person we'll call Michael. Michael also earns $100,000 a year. But instead of waiting, he finances almost everything. His car, his furniture, his vacations, even his new phone. Every month, money leaves his account. Not because he's investing, but because he's making monthly payments. Now here's the question. If you owned the bank, which customer would make your business more money? Sarah or Michael? Most people answer Sarah. After all, she earns well. She's responsible. She rarely misses a payment. Sounds like the perfect customer. But that's only true if you're judging responsibility, not profitability. Because every month, Sarah uses the bank, then leaves. Michael keeps coming back. Every payment creates another payment. Every loan creates years of future income. And suddenly, the picture starts to change. Banks don't become profitable because people save. They become profitable when money keeps moving. The longer Money stays borrowed. The longer the business keeps earning. That's why your monthly payment is far more important than you might think, because you're not simply repaying money, you're paying for something far more valuable, time, and that's where the real story begins. If, let's assume, you walk into a store, there's only one product, time. One shelf says, "Take it today, pay us back over the next 30 years. Another shelf says, "Take it today, pay us back over the next 5 years. A third shelf says, "Take it today, pay us back next month." Different products, different prices, different payment plans. Or at least, that's what it looks like. Because in reality, the product never changed. Only the amount of time you borrowed it. That's when I realized banks don't really sell money. Money is just the vehicle. The real product is time. Think about it. When you buy a house, the bank doesn't manufacture bricks, concrete, or steel. When you finance a car, the bank didn't build the engine. When you swipe your credit card, the bank didn't make your dinner. Someone else created the product. The bank simply gave you something incredibly valuable, the ability to enjoy it before you could afford it. In other words, they sold you tomorrow, and tomorrow is never free. Every extra month has a price. Every extra year has a price. The longer you buy today with tomorrow's money, the more tomorrow costs. That's why a mortgage can end up costing hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the price of the house itself. Not because the house became bigger, but because time was expensive. And once you begin looking at every loan as buying time, something strange happens. You stop asking, "What's the monthly payment?" and you start asking, "How much is this time actually costing me?" That single question has the power to completely change the way you use money. Because once you understand what banks are really selling, you'll finally understand why debt can quietly follow someone for decades. The strange part is, most people don't wake up planning to spend years in debt. It usually begins with something small: a credit card, a new phone, a weekend vacation, a car that feels just a little nicer. One decision rarely changes your life, but dozens of small decisions quietly do. Because debt almost never feels like debt in the beginning. It feels like freedom. You can afford it. Only $30 a month. 0% interest. Buy now, pay later. Listen carefully. Almost every advertisement wants you to focus on one number: the monthly payment, not the total cost. Because $100 a month feels small. $3,600 feels different. Our brains naturally compare monthly payments, not years of payments. And businesses know it. Imagine walking into a car dealership. Nobody asks, How much money do you want to spend? Instead, they ask, how much can you afford? Each month? It's a small difference, but it changes everything. The conversation moves away from price and toward payments, because once your mind starts thinking in monthly payments, almost anything can begin to look affordable. A slightly bigger house, a slightly newer car, a slightly better phone, a slightly more expensive lifestyle, until one day, your future income already belongs to yesterday's decisions. And every month, before you buy groceries, before you invest, before you save, someone else gets paid first. That's the part most people never notice. Debt doesn't only cost money, it quietly competes with your future. Every dollar used to repay interest is one less dollar building wealth, which means the real cost isn't always the interest you pay. Sometimes it's the investments you never made, the opportunities you never had, the freedom you never realized you were giving away. And that's exactly why the game is much bigger than borrowing money. Imagine something unusual happens. Millions of people begin learning how money really works. They spend less than they earn. They build emergency funds. They invest month after month. They avoid high interest debt whenever possible. Would banks disappear? No. People would still need checking accounts. Businesses would still need loans to grow. Families would still buy homes. Banks would continue to play an essential role in the economy. But something would change. The average customer would become much harder to profit from, because instead of paying interest, they'd begin earning it. Think about that for a moment. The same dollar can work for you or against you. When you borrow, your money works for the lender. When you invest, money begins working for you. That's one of the biggest shifts most people never experience. They spend years working for money instead of learning how to make money work for them. Financial freedom doesn't mean never borrowing again. Sometimes debt is useful. Sometimes it helps build a business, buy a home, or create opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist. The difference is simple. You choose when debt works for you, instead of waking up years later realizing you've been working for your debt. Maybe the question was never why banks want you to borrow. Maybe the better question is this: why aren't more people taught how to become the person who earns interest instead of paying it? Because the day that changes, the game changes too. So, do banks want you to stay broke? Not exactly. Banks don't wake up planning to make people poor. They simply operate like every other business. They earn more when their products are used, and their biggest product has never been money. It's time. The longer you rent it, the more it costs. That's why the real question was never, can I afford the monthly payment? The better question is, what will this decision cost my future? Because every financial decision creates a future version of you. One version wakes up with options, the other wakes up with obligations. The difference is rarely one big decision, it's hundreds of small ones. Learning before borrowing, saving before spending, investing before upgrading, choosing assets before liabilities. Not because debt is evil, but because freedom is valuable. The goal isn't to avoid banks. The goal is to understand the rules well enough to make them work for you. Because one day you'll walk into a bank and you'll have a choice to pay interest or to earn it. And on that day, the relationship changes forever. Because financial freedom doesn't begin when you become rich. It begins the moment you stop asking, how can I borrow more? And start asking, how can my money work harder than I do? Once you understand that question, you'll never look at money the same way again. If this video changed the way you think, then this is only the beginning. Because the rules most people follow were never designed to make them free. The rules we're going to explore just might. I'll see you in the next one.